Good evening, folks. Welcome to everydaykt, and we are looking at number 66. No, we're not killing any Jedi tonight, so you don't have to worry about that. So tonight we're talking about a couple of my favorite things, whiskey and beer. So as you noticed in the description, whiskey was spelled W-H-I-S-K-Y. So there's a reason for that. If there's an E-Y, generally it is a bourbon, an American whiskey, or a non-Scotch whiskey. Hey Frank. If it's just W-H-I-S-K-Y, it's Scotch. That's my understanding. Any experts out there say otherwise, please do. So, first things first, beer. Beer's the easy one because more people like beer than they like whiskeys and scotches. As always, beer is an acquired taste. Sort of, you acquire the beer and you taste it. Personal favorites. I spent 3 or 4 years working for Budweiser, so I got Budweiser products, sure at a pinch. The white Belgian ales, not too shabby. Guinness is the default, de facto, the one, if I'm going to have a beer, Guinness is the preferred beverage of choice. Preferred beverage of choice. Yes, that works. So, the thing with Guinness, definitely it's also a very acquired taste. A lot of people don't like it. I kind of got hooked on it when I decided I was going to go to at a party I was going to, and I was like, what beer can I set on the beer table and it's not going to get stolen? Boom. Got myself a 6-pack of Guinness cans. We'll get into that in a second. Dropped them on the table. I drank 5 of them. The 6th was one I gave to someone because he was impressed that there was Guinness there. So, the thing with Guinness, the best is on tap, obviously. Second best is a can because it has the nitrogen widget in it. Bottled Guinness is an affront to Guinness as a whole. If you have an option between bottled Guinness and no Guinness, then sure, but I don't like it. It's not that great. So that's all the beer. All you need to know about beer. Anything that I didn't talk about, if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. That's totally up to you. So now to the fun stuff. Scotch. I discovered single malt Scotch. I don't know, about the same time I discovered kilts with the Oklahoma Malt Whiskey Society and the Scottish Club out in Tulsa. They had we had some great shenanigans wrapped around Scotch. And when you get into Scotches to start with, you either find one you like and you stay with that style, or you never find anything you like. There are some very distinct styles of Scotch. You've got your Highland Scotch, which is Macallan, and most of the bar Scotches. You have your Lowland Scotch, not that much a fan. Speyside Scotch, also not a fan. You have your Islay Scotch, which is my favorite by a long shot. They are the oaky, peaty, the ones that taste like you're chewing on an old campfire. Love them. And I think the other one is Orkney. I don't remember. I don't remember what the 5th one is. I don't know. It's obviously not on the list of Scotches that I pay any attention to, because the Islas are where it's at, as far as I'm concerned. When you start getting into the single malts, what you want to do is just take it really slow. The best example of what happens when you don't take it slow, I was at a bar with a friend, and she said that she'd never had Scotch. She's like, I'd like to try that. I was sitting there drinking some 10-year-old Lefroy. Awesome, by the way, and more available than most others. So I said, sure. Gave her a glass, and I was sipping mine. I look over, And she pulls one of these numbers. Ooh, boom, knocks it back. I'm looking, I'm like, that's going to hurt. That's going to suck. So, any of you who have seen those slow motion, or actually, I'm sorry, those fast motion movies where of like flowers growing or the sunrise or stuff like that, where they take 5, 10, 20 hours worth of footage and cram it into like 5 minutes. Well, if you take someone getting hammered and you span it over, say, 3 or 4 hours, cram that into about 15 minutes, and that's what happened to this poor girl. On the stools, talking to me like I'm talking to you right now. 15 minutes later, boom, out like a light. 5 minutes later, I had her over my shoulder, walked out of the bar because her parents' house was a half a block away. Carried her back to her house, dumped her in a bed, said goodnight, and she doesn't touch the stuff at all. So that's why you don't rush it when you're dealing with Scotch. Try as many different flavors and styles as you can. If you're going to try an Isla, which I highly suggest, I would suggest Talisker 10-year-old single malt. It's very smooth. It's not very really overpoweringly oaky and peaty, but it's really it gets the point across. It gives you a little bit of that oak and the peat, but it's not overpowering like a Lafroig. If you like it, great. If you don't, try one of the other types. There's tons of them. Dave, not a drinker. That's fine. If you're not drinking, so be it. I have absolutely no trouble there at all. I have a lot of friends who don't drink anymore for one reason or the other. Some good, some bad, some because it just got too expensive. Scotch is an awful expensive habit. So back to what we're talking about getting into scotches. So, like I said, when you try your scotches, first thing, ask someone who actually knows about single malt. If someone says, I love Scotch, and the first thing that comes out of their mouth is, Jack Daniels is awesome, walk away, because they don't know what they're talking about. Jameson is a good Irish whiskey to look at. To start, most bars have that. Macallan, most bars will have it. Johnny Walker's a decent blend, but again, it's a blend. It's okay. So, and if some of you are wondering, I'm chewing on throat lozenges, so I don't sit here and start coughing or anything. Go slow with the scotches. And like I said, find someone who knows Scotch, or at least knows something, pretends to. Crown Royal, you are hilarious. Crown Royal, that's some funny stuff there. Chivas, haven't had Chivas, don't know. So once you've found something that you like, go online, start looking around, and see what you can find other scotches in that same family. One thing that I have found is it's a blend called McClellan's with a D at the end. They do an actually decent job of the blends, and they're very, very inexpensive. Their Isla is actually something that I would purchase on a regular basis, just to have at the house. So, at about $35 for a 175, it's a really good deal. They do a really good job on their Isla. The Highlands, Speyside, I haven't tried. Glenfiddich, yes, Glenfiddich is really good, especially some of the specific barrels that they have and the specific bottlings. They get kind of crazy with them. So does the Glenmorangie. There's actually so many different Glens as far as different scotches. You have to just keep an eye on which one you're getting. You could wind up getting a Glenmorangie something or other. Go back the next day and the bottle looks the same, but it has one word different, completely different flavor, completely different texture of the single malt, totally different animal, and you don't even realize it. So just be careful when you're out there. Where are who from? I have no idea. Most of the scotches are from Scotland, obviously. To be considered a true Scotch, I believe it has to be barreled and aged in Scotland for, I think, 3 years to be labeled a single malt Scotch in Scotland. Don't quote me on that. I haven't looked today. So, as we get into the more Scotches, if you can find malt whiskey societies in your area, or you happen to be lucky and live near any distilleries, go to the tastings. There's tons of great fun to be had at tastings. In Hartford, Connecticut, they shoehorned a Scottish festival into a couple of things right around one of the highways and stuff. So I went there in Lefroy, had a tasting, and it was awesome. They had 5 different flavors. And, of course, they had the 10, they had a 21, I think, a 15, and 2 small batch flavor, options. And they were all pretty good. Of course, I like the 10. So that's kind of how I rolled. So as your palate develops with the single malts, be careful. What can happen is that you start liking Scotch, and then you get to the point where you're just like drinking it, and then you realize that the glass is gone and it's only been 5 or 6 minutes. Take it, be cognizant of what it is you're drinking, because the odds are, if you're at a bar, that little glass of about this much Scotch probably costs between $8 and $15. So remember, it's a sipping drink. It is not a shoot and move on to the next one. So just be careful there. So somebody, I could talk about Scotch for hours and hours and hours. My best advice to anyone out there looking for Scotches: go out there and just try them. Get out there, go to, some of the higher end bars. They'll have 5 or 6 bottles off in a corner somewhere or up on the top. Angela, awesome. Read my mind. So just look. There was one place I went to, didn't think they'd ever have they had a bottle of Lefroy unopened sitting up in the corner in the back. They thought it was a bottle of Jameson and just put it in the wrong spot. Happened to be a wonderful night because I showed up early and there were lots of friends, and amongst the however many of us wound up polishing off the bottle, something like 7 or 8 of us, so it wasn't like we were all just getting loaded as hell. But it was a good night. It was a really good night. So, to that note, I will give you some Kiltology. See what we got here. Huh. Well, this can technically apply to Scotch. It applies to a whole lot of other stuff, too. Kiltology number 412. Beliefs. Never, for a moment, assume that a kiltie is standing next to you. Oh, wow, see? Whoever edited this book missed one. It might have been one that I slipped in just to mess with you. Never for a moment assume that because a kiltie is standing next to you, he believes any of the same things you do, or believes him in the same way that you do. Assuming such and acting as such can have dire consequences, especially when you realize you have been talking to someone about something in which he has no interest at all. He's actually trying to get the attention of the bonny lass behind you. But you figured since he was intently listening to you prattle on, because he was facing you. Ask first, then discuss. It will save you from embarrassing yourself publicly. So, where did that come from? If I'm not mistaken, it came from a little old lady asking what kind of Christian I was, because I had a kilt on. And I said, what do you mean? And she says, well, or what kind of Scotsman? One who's accepted Jesus or one who's about to? And having researched and looked into most every faith, and truth be told, I was feeling a little shenanigan-y. I'm like, well, I'm not quite sure yet, but I've been studying Eastern philosophy a lot lately, so something along the lines of a Buddhist Christian. And her mind locked up, kind of. So, when you're out there talking to somebody in a kilt, or anybody in that matter, never, ever, ever assume that just because they have the decency to talk with you politely and cordially, that they're actually agreeing with you and they think the exact same thing that you do. Odds are they probably think the exact opposite. They just don't want to be an ass. So, until tomorrow, be strong, put a kilt on. And for those of you up here in the Northeast or anywhere where there's tons of snow, remember, wind and kilts and snow are bad. Talk to you tomorrow.